Hello everyone. So I hope you enjoyed the first lecture. Now today we'll be starting with your actual syllabus. So the first topic is frequency distribution and associated measures. This was in your syllabus for the last semester also. So I hope you have heard many of the things. In fact, this entire lecture might be a repetition for you. But I thought that since it's again included in the syllabus, it's better to re-emphasize things. Okay. So what is a frequency distribution? Given any data, so for example you have some observations recorded. Let's say we are recording number of siblings each one of you have. Okay. So some people have say 0 siblings, then someone has 1, someone has 2, 3. So you first go on recording the data. Okay. So let us say I ask person 1, person 2, and let's say you have 30 people in your class. So I ask each one of you how many siblings you have and I record that data here. So person 1 says I have 1 sibling, person 2 says I have no siblings, someone says 2 and so on. And say person 1 also says 2. Okay. So at the end I can make a frequency table of say 0, 1, 2, 3. So how many people said they have 0 siblings? So maybe out of 30, 2 people said they have 0 siblings. Then maybe around maybe 20 people said they have 1 sibling. Then maybe 4 people said they have 2 siblings. And then suppose 4 people said they have 3 siblings. Okay. So this becomes a frequency distribution. And using this frequency distribution, we can compute sample mean, sample variance and many such statistics. But today we are going to go into something further. We are going to do some testing based on frequency distribution to conclude something about the population. You have studied I think t-test, f-test etc. in your earlier semester. So we know that we always use these testing strategies or these test statistics to conclude something about population on the basis of what we know about the sample. So sample and population, if you recall, population is the entire thing that you are interested in studying and sample is a part of it, a representative part of it, and we have data only on the sample. On the basis of that, we try to generalize our result so that they are applicable for the entire population. Okay. So let us try to see what are the main things that we would do. So most of the tests based on frequency distributions are associated with chi-square distribution. So you have seen basic probability distributions and chi-square distribution is one of them. We won't go into the PDF, it's a slightly complicated form and anyway it is available in most of the books and over the internet also. So I don't expect you to remember PDF. PDF is probability density function. But I want you to remember if you know something about normal or Gaussian distribution. So normal distribution is normal distribution is the most widely used distribution in statistics, probability distribution in statistics. And all of you know that it has the typical bell-shaped curve, right? And okay, of course my drawing is not that great, but you can imagine this to be a symmetric bell-shaped curve. And then you have studied many properties of it. The distribution is symmetric, then you might have heard of 3 sigma limits, 2 sigma limits, 1 sigma limit and so on. Okay. So chi-square distribution actually arises from normal distribution. So if I know that my x1, x2, xn, these are coming from normal distribution with mean mu, variance sigma square, and they are what is known as IID. IID is independent and identically distributed, means each of them have same distribution, that is normal, and they are independent of each other. Then we define a z-score for ith observation as xi minus mu upon sigma, and if I compute z1 square plus z2 square up to zn square, it becomes chi-square. This is the notation, chi-square with n degrees of freedom. So degrees of freedom is like a parameter. Just like in normal you have mu and sigma, similarly you have degrees of freedom in chi-square. Okay. So actually mean of chi-square n distribution is n. Okay. So this is how chi-square comes into picture. This is just a theoretical background. What we need is the actual application of it. So where we are going to use chi-square in the frequency setup. So there are two major setups. First is independence of attributes and second is goodness of fit. Okay. In those two classes, so whenever you want to test independence of attributes, what do I mean by independence of attributes? A very famous and a typical example of this is you want to answer a question, does smoking increase chances of lung cancer? Okay, as a biologist, someone may ask you this question, does smoking really increase chances of lung cancer? So how do you establish this? So you can use the test that we are going to discuss today. Okay. And goodness of fit means you want to compare with some standard assumptions. For example, someone wants to test, are there more accidents on weekends? Okay. So this might be an example that I'm interested in. Are there more accidents on weekends than on weekdays? Okay. So if you want to test some such assumption, then these tests can be useful. Okay. So remember these two typical examples and we'll study things in more detail. So both these tests, chi-square tests, follow the basic principle. The test statistic is computed as sum over I going from 1 to k. We will soon see what k is. OI minus EI whole square upon EI. Okay. Please don't get put off by the notation. Things are quite easy. We will see through example. Even though in notation it might look different. And what is OI? OI is the observed frequency for ith class. And EI is the expected frequency for ith class. Okay, so what is meant by this? Let me try to explain. Let us take some further simple example, not even the above two examples. Okay, so suppose we want to see whether the proportion of male and female students is the same for, proportion of male and female students is the same in your department. Okay. And we want to take each class as a unit. So we want to see if in every class, say first year, second year, third year, do we have almost 50% girls and 50% boys. Okay. See, you can't have exactly 50-50. There are going to be some chance variations. You know that same thing happens even in coin toss. You know that your coin is perfect, but that doesn't mean if you toss it 2 times you will get exactly one head and exactly one tail. Sometimes you get 2 heads, sometimes you get 2 tails, and sometimes you get 1 head and 1 tail. So chance variations are of course going to be there. So if I assume that every batch has say 30 students, ideal situation would be yes, exactly 15 male and exactly 15 female. But that need not happen. Perhaps 16-14 or perhaps even 13-17 might be an acceptable ratio. We don't know. So how far can we say it's an acceptable ratio? 13-17 is acceptable, but is 11 and 19 also acceptable? Can we say that 11-19 has also occurred by chance and there is no special preference against against or towards a certain gender. Okay, so to examine such situation, we can use this kind of test statistic. So OI is the observed frequency and EI is the expected frequency. So here I have two groups, so female students and male students. So observed frequency would be whatever is the actual number of female students. So for example, in your batch, suppose let us assume that you have 16 male students and 14 female students. So this becomes your observed frequency. Now what is expected frequency? Expected is expected under the hypothesis that you want to prove or disprove. So I am saying we want to check whether we have equal proportion of girls and boys. So equal means my expected frequency would be 15-15. Okay, so we expect 15 girls and 15 boys. Okay, so when would we say that this is more or less acceptable as per this? If the difference between this and this is not too high, right? So that's what we compute here. We compute observed minus expected for each. So here 14 minus 15 becomes -1, 16 minus 15 becomes +1. Okay. Now the problem is, if I simply add these deviations, then I'll get -1 + 1, so I'll get 0. And I wouldn't know whether this is 0 because they got cancelled out, or whether this was actually 15-15 and hence every difference was 0 and hence it has become 0. Okay, so 0 would mask the complete picture. It won't show me the complete picture. Is it okay? So that's why we don't take simply the difference, we take squared differences. Okay, so square of this would become 1, square of this would become 1, so I will get 2, which shows that okay, yes, there is some deviation at least. Okay, so that's why we compute OI minus EI whole square. And now why do we divide by EI? Why don't we simply stop at this difference and in square difference? See, generally whenever you want to measure a deviation or error, you measure it in terms of relative things. Why relative? Let me take an example. Suppose I have 100 rupees in my pocket and you have, so this is me and this is you. So you have 1000 rupees in your pocket. Okay. Both of us lose a 10 rupee note. Okay. We are going to a canteen and we misplace a 10 rupee note. Now, technically both of us have lost exact same amount. But who do you think would be sadder? See, I have lost 10 rupees out of 100 rupees I had, means I have lost 10% of whatever I had. Whereas you have lost 10 rupees from 1000 rupees that you had, so you have lost only 1% of what you had. So my loss, technically, even though it looks same, it is bigger, much bigger than your loss. Okay, hence whenever you compute difference or deviation, relative thing is important. So you need to see out of how much. So that is exactly the purpose of having this EI in the denominator. Okay, so you see the square difference and you scale it by expected frequency. So kind of out of how much this is this much different. Okay, and you do it for every class, you add, and then if that number is too big in some sense, you say okay, you can't say that OIs and EIs are more or less same because the difference is too big. If the number is pretty small, we will say okay, the difference between OI and EI is not that big, so we can probably accept the null hypothesis. Okay, I hope you remember all the terms: null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis. In fact, I think sent you a link of many lectures just to refresh your previous things. Okay. Okay, so is the concept clear how we use the chi-square test statistic? And this k becomes the number of groups. So here I have males and females. So my k is 2. Now when I say too big or too small, again the question arises, who decides what is too big and what is too small? So theoretical statisticians have already done that job for you. So they have proved that if your null hypothesis is true, Means if your OIs are actually most similar to EIs, then this becomes chi-square with k minus r degrees of freedom. Ideally you should write okay, let me write k minus 1 minus r. Okay, what is k minus 1? K is number of groups. So you make k minus 1 because we know addition is going to be fixed always. So for example, here we knew that my class consists of 30 people. So as soon as I know how many females, how many males is automatically fixed. I can't change it. Okay, so I have a freedom to choose only one reading. Other automatically gets fixed. Hence k minus 1, because if you had 3 classes, you can fix 2 and the third one automatically gets fixed. Okay, and r is the number of parameters you estimate. In this case, we don't estimate anything because we are just taking equal parameters. So, sorry, equal proportions. So, number of parameters to be estimated or estimated. Okay, it would be more clear when we take some example from distribution. Okay. The independence of attributes thing also has same test statistic OI minus EI whole square upon EI, but the degrees of freedom are different. We will see that in a detail. So because we have started with male female example, let us go for goodness of fit first. Okay, because this was one example of goodness of fit. We can have few more examples. So goodness of fit test in chi-square, we will compute observed frequencies, expected frequencies, and we'll do things. So the example I discussed above is, do we have more accidents on weekends than say weekdays? So more accidents on weekends. So ideally, if you consider any weekday, so let us say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So ideally H0, my H0 would be, we have equal proportion of accidents on weekdays and weekends. Okay, H0 would say equal proportion of accidents. See, your alternative hypothesis is generally the hypothesis you are interested in. Okay, H0 is always hypothesis of no difference kind of thing. So if you want to check whether there are more accidents on weekends, your alternative hypothesis becomes that yes, there are more accidents on weekends. Whereas your null hypothesis becomes that no, everything is equal. Means weekdays and weekends, there are same number of accidents. So H1 is not equal. Okay. Ideally, more means we should have a more specific hypothesis, but we will stick to the simplest case. So we will say, okay, not equal. The proportion of accidents on weekdays and weekends is not equal. Okay. So I want 1 by 7 here, 1 by 7, 1 by 7, 1 by 7, 1 by 7, and then again 1 by 7, 1 by 7. So if I want to divide into all 7 classes, I know that each of them should have 1 by 7 number of accidents roughly. Okay. If I want to actually divide only the weekend weekday thing, then this ideally should have 5 by 7 because there are 5 days, and this should have 2 by 7 as the proportion of accidents. Okay. So let me go with the 1 by 7 case. So in that case, my ideal H0 is there are equal proportion of accidents on each day of the week. So I have modified my hypothesis a bit. I am not just concluding about weekday weekends, I am concluding about each day, and my alternative would be at least one of the days has higher proportion of accidents, has higher or lower, that is different proportion of accidents than other days. Okay. I am saying at least one. So it may happen that every day of the week has a different proportion of accidents. That is also fine. Now suppose you fix a location. Let us say, see, you can't have compare different locations because it may happen that okay, I mean things are not comparable because of the location differences. So for the time being, let me fix the location. Let us say University road from, say, again we have to specify a patch, so let us say from E square till what is it, Bremen Chalk. Okay, so from E square till Bremen Square. Let us say I'm talking of this patch and I'm recording how many accidents happen in a week. So I record number of accidents Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, of course. So Saturday, Sunday. So let us say you have, say, 10 accidents on Monday, 11 here, 9 here, 8, 12, and then you have suppose 14 here and maybe 13 here. Okay, so let me see what is the addition. So 21 and 9, 30, 38, 50 plus 27, so 67. So my total number of accidents recorded is suppose 67. So I have data on 67 accidents. I checked how many of them happened in each day and I have recorded them. So these become my observed frequencies, OI. Now expected frequencies I would again compute as, expected is 1 by 7 of total accidents on each day. So expected frequency would become 67 by 7 for each class. Okay. It is same for each class. Is it okay? And then I can compute OI minus EI whole square upon EI. So 67 by 7 minus 10 whole square upon 67 by 7 and so on. And you will add those. And this, I have 7 classes. So I have to compare with chi-square 6. Compare means what? So the graph of chi-square may be something like this. So chi-square 6 means it will have mode at 4. So if I have suppose 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on. So I'll have mode at 4. So the distribution is something like this. Okay. And you compute 95th percentile. I hope you know all this terminology. 95th or 1 minus alphath percentile of chi-square 6. Suppose it turns out to be, say, T tab. It is called as T tab, that is tabulated value of the test statistic. And if your observed value or calculated value of the test statistic, if it is greater than tabulated value, you say reject H0. Okay, reject H0. Or in terms of p-value, if your p-value is less than alpha, that is 0.5, you again say reject H0. Okay, that is, you will conclude that the proportion of accidents on each day of the week is not the same. At least one day has different. If you accept H0, you would conclude that proportion of the accidents on each day of the week is same. Okay. Now this doesn't have to be just good equal proportion. You can have something else also. For example, you know that some traits, some genetic traits are passed in the ratio 1:2:2:1. Okay, so you can check this proportion also. So is the division actually of this type? Okay, suppose you collect data on, say, 50 individuals and you see how they are divided. Suppose you have 10 here, 25 here and 7 here and 8 here. So is this compatible with 1:2:2:1? So what you can do is, these are your observed frequencies of 4 types. Expected frequencies would be now 2 plus 2, 4, 5, 6. So you divide the total by 6. So 50 by 6 here, then twice of it. So 100 by 6, 100 by 6 and 50 by 6. Okay, addition has to be 50. So this is 100 plus 100, 200 and then 300 by 6. So it is 50. Okay. So these become your expected frequencies. From how did I get this number? From these proportions. I want to maintain this proportion. So this is 1 out of total. So 1 by 6, 2 by 6, 2 by 6, 1 by 6. 6 I am getting as 2 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1. Okay, so this is the observed proportion, this is expected proportion. Now I can again compute OI minus EI whole square upon EI, and I would compare this with chi-square 3 degrees of freedom. Why 3? Because I had 4 classes, so 4 minus 1, 3. Okay, so in all these examples we had pre-designated proportions, right? But we need not always have pre-designated proportions. We can have comparison with some standard distribution also in the goodness of fit thing. So for example, you have studied binomial, Poisson, Bernoulli distributions, right? So suppose the number of sibling things. So we saw that there are 0, 1, 2, 3. Suppose these are the only possible values, and technically number of siblings won't have an upper bound. So these are the observed values. So in your class we didn't have someone who had 4 siblings, but yes, there are people who have 4 siblings. Okay, so I cannot use binomial because technically there is no upper bound. So maybe I can try to model this via Poisson distribution. Okay, so someone tells me that Poisson with lambda equal to 1 is probably a good fit for number of siblings. Okay, and I want to test that hypothesis. Okay, so suppose I want to test whether the number of siblings can be assumed to have distribution Poisson with mean 1. So what were the observed frequencies that we recorded, say, in your class? We have it somewhere here. Yeah, 224.4. So observed frequencies are 224.4, and from 4 onwards everything is 0. Okay, these are observed frequencies. And what are expected frequencies? Now in Poisson distribution, we know the formula for PMF is probability that x equal to x is e raised to minus lambda, lambda raised to x upon x factorial. And we want to try with lambda equal to 1. So for 0, it becomes just e raised to minus 1. Because lambda raised to 0 is 1, 0 factorial is 1. So this becomes expected probability, but I want frequency. So frequency would become 30 times e raised to minus 1 because total number of observations here is 30. Okay. Then for 1 it would be 30 e raised to minus 1 into 1 raised to 1. Lambda is 1, so 1 raised to 1 is fine. And for 2 it becomes 30 into e raised to minus 1, 1 square upon 1 square is 1, so upon 2 factorial, so upon 2. And for 3 it becomes 30 into e raised to minus 1 upon 3 factorial. 3 factorial is 6. And now for remaining classes also I have some values, but because we don't have anything here, we would combine. So we would say greater than or equal to 3 and we would delete this. So this probability becomes this plus 30 e raised to minus 1 upon 4 factorial plus 30 e raised to minus 1 upon 5 factorial and so on. The entire thing. Okay. So now I can again compute OI minus EI whole square upon EI. Okay. And take the sum and compare with chi-square. Is it okay? Now here how many classes do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would compare this again with chi-square 3. Okay. Here lambda equal to 1 was given. Now consider a scenario where someone asks me, can I approximate the number of siblings via Poisson distribution, but I don't want to specify any mean. Any mean is fine with me. So we don't know the mean. We are just interested in checking whether it can be approximated via Poisson distribution with some mean. In that case, I won't start with lambda equal to 1. What I'll do is, I know that lambda is mean of the data. Okay, lambda is mean. So I would check what is the sample mean x bar, and I would say that x bar can be taken as estimate of lambda. Okay, lambda hat. X bar can be taken as estimate of lambda. Okay, and then I would use that x bar in place of lambda, and now because I have estimated one parameter from the data, my chi-square becomes 3 minus 1, that is chi-square with 2 degrees of freedom. Why? This minus 1 is because I have estimated one parameter from the data. So I am using data for some purpose, so I am losing my freedom. Okay. So degrees of freedom are reduced by 1. Whatever is the number of parameters, you reduce by that estimated number of parameters. So if you are comparing, if you are doing goodness of fit for normal distribution, you would be decreasing by 2 because you will be estimating two things, mean as well as variance. So you will be decreasing the class count minus 1 by 2. Is it okay? Now you might be wondering that in the case of normal distribution, I am going to have continuous observation. So I may not have 0, 1, 2, 3 type of scenario. In Poisson it was discrete count data, so it was okay. So what we do in situation like normal or exponential distribution is we make classes. For example, I am studying say distribution of heights. Then I can make classes. So less than or equal to 4 feet is one class. So this can be denoted as minus infinity to 4. Then 4 feet to 4.5 is suppose other class. Then 4.5 to 5 is other class, and so on. So I get such classes. Then I can observe how many people fall in this height range. I record that count here. So F1, F2 and so on. And how do I compute expected frequencies? Do you remember CDF, cumulative distribution function? So that can help me. So I want probability of this entire class. So probability of this entire class would be CDF at 4. Okay, because CDF is probability of x being less than or equal to 4, which is what I want. For this class, second class, what I want is probability of x being between 4 and 4.5. So this can be obtained by CDF at 4.5 minus CDF at 4. Because this will give you probability of being less than or equal to 4.5. From that you want to subtract probability of being less than or equal to 4. So what you get is probability of being between 4 and 4.5. Okay. So this would be f at 4.5 minus f at 5. Sorry, f at 4 and so on. These things would give you expected probabilities. You want expected frequency. So you multiply by total number of observations. Okay. And you again compute OI minus EI whole square upon EI. With software, of course, things would be easier. So we'll be doing this using software also. But I'm explaining these things because you should know the basics. Okay. There are a couple of precautions about chi-square test. You are generally not supposed to use chi-square test if your class frequencies are less than 4. Especially expected frequencies are less than 4. Okay. So for very small samples, you shouldn't use them. So if expected frequencies are less than 4, in such case maybe you can combine those classes. So maybe you take greater than or equal to 2 here instead of greater than or equal to 3 and 2 as separate classes, and so on. Okay, so this is about chi-square test for goodness of fit. So I think I will stop here today. I'm not sure if you had done these things last time. And even if you had done, how many of those things you remember very clearly. So I think I would stop here today. Because it's a video lecture, you have, the facility of pausing things in between if you feel things are going fast, or rewinding and re-listening to things and so on. So please do that. Please listen to this lecture. If you feel the speed is fine, no problem. You can just watch it in one shot. But if you feel that, okay, you're not, the speed is slightly high, you can maybe pause things, re-listen to it and so on. And of course, you are welcome to let me know. I will try to reduce the speed next time. I'm going a bit fast because I expect you to have done this already in the earlier semester. Okay. So in the next lecture, we will go for independence of attribute test. Okay. So today we will stop at goodness of fit. Thank you.